Thank you, Professor Nabil. The next presentation is from Professor Benoit Murel, Cybersecurity in Africa, yesterday, today, and tomorrow. So, Professor Benoit, born in France, grew mostly in Geneva and completed a PhD at the University of Geneva and CERN in theoretical high-energy physics. His postdoctoral career in physics took him to Harvard, CERN, and Caltech. From there, he moved to what was then the Center of International Security and Arms Control, CISAC, at Stanford as a science fellow. His research interests shift to international security. From there, he joined Carnegie Mellon University as a faculty, when he has been here since. His research interests in security include nuclear security and safety, in particular the Iraqi and Indian program, as well as cybersecurity policy, and in particular in international dimension. So, Professor Benoit, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So that's the system here. Okay, so I will do some trick as what's it called? Sparky. I will not go. I understand if everybody's tired. I don't exactly know how much time I have, but I won't use it completely. But I want to send a message. Which one do I have to press in order for this to work? This work? Yes. So my idea is to speak about Africa CERT, what I think Africa CERT's challenge is, and how it could potentially move, considering that what Africa CERT wants to do is different, but not totally different, significantly different from whatever has existed so far. So the agenda of Africa CERT for me shows in this picture, which I think some people have seen already, which come from first, which shows a little bit among all the CERTs, and I suppose Don will contradict me on that, but doesn't matter. CERTs is absolutely the fundamental component of cybersecurity. I think it's by there you start. Cybersecurity is probably the most complex threat against modern societies, and CERTs are absolutely replaceable unit in order to fight those. Now, among the CERTs, some of them belongs to this thing first, the Forum for Incident Response, Security Teams, and first has become, whatever it started like, become now a kind of stamp of approval of the quality of a CERT, you see. And it's very strongly correlated to the degree of, should I put it, maturity in cybersecurity in different countries. As you can see, North America, Western Europe, and most of Asia are very well represented in first. But now you see Africa is not. Africa has exactly 6 teams in first. 3 of them are, one from Morocco, one from Tunisia, one from Egypt. The 3 others come from South Africa. Well, first is not specifically focused on national CERTs, but in fact, any kind of CERT that meets some criteria. You can have much more teams than their countries. But you see, I think the measure of success of Africa CERT will be how fast Africa will become in green, you see. And I absolutely should consider their role to try to facilitate that in all sorts of ways. And those first could be national first, which is in fact most of them are in Africa, at least the one in the north. But it could also be other kind of CERTs. But I think that's the first point I want to make as strongly as possible. And I think we should use our imagination today, consider what Africa is, how you go from here to there, see. As mentioned by Don this morning, cybersecurity started in earnest in 1988 with when this guy, then a graduate student, Robert Morris, released a worm. And as he said, that internet then was small. It was clogged, in fact, so much so that when he wanted to explain to people what he did, because it was not malicious intent there, he could not communicate with anybody. But it's small because you can see in 1988, the number of hosts was somewhere between 10,000 and 100,000, maybe around 50,000, if you compare with today, which is more like 1 billion, sorry. So speaking of hosts now speaking not exactly the same as number of users, but in any case, you can see the number is different. Now the split of these numbers there is wrong because United States, they created the United States, every.com, .net, .org, and whatever. But fundamentally, now we're past 1 billion of, but then you see nevertheless, despite the fact that there is only 50,000 or so hosts, which is small compared to today, there is a sense very important. And as a result, a CERT, as exactly Don said this morning, was created in real time, because it was exactly a few months later, it started in earnest in Carnegie Mellon University, and it was the first CERT which has been so seminal, and now obviously it's been part of a large, very much large ecology of things. When I say that this is a complex society, it's a complex threat, every single aspect of the world of modern societies is affected by cybersecurity one way or the other. So that's the reason why it's just not something you can simply globally treat. You have to treat that as a complex threat, you see. So I will not deal on that. Now look also the way on the users now is different from hosts. The users, the way it evolved, you see. That is, this has two purposes. The first is, this is coming from the world internet usage, comparing 2000, the column here, 2000 with 2013, you see. So in the last 13 years. But altogether, in Africa, for example, went from 4 million users to 240 million users, which means it's more or less a fifth of Africa now, of the people living in Africa are part of that, whereas before, are users of Internet, which this is an enormous growth. It's a multiple by 60. Not 6, but 60, which is much larger than the growth anywhere else. But they still put Africa behind everywhere else. As you can see, Africa is only 21% penetration, and you know it's growing. And the impact that this penetration has is massive, because it means users go on the Internet now and do that not only for email and Facebook, although they do a lot of that as well, but also for economic activity. But with it comes a lot of headaches in terms of cybersecurity. So Africa is the continent in a move. So is, in fact, Asia to some extent. But here is, I look at all the I will not look at the goal detail of that, obviously, but the goal of that is to show this 21.3% is an average. But in fact, in Africa, you go from Ethiopia, if you manage to find Ethiopia somewhere, 1.9%, which is a miserable thing considering the importance of Ethiopia. They have an airline in Ethiopia. But they have a penetration that's absolutely miserable. Well, you can see if you go to Morocco, for example, which is in the next one, you'll have something like close to 50%, the same as Morocco is 56%, in fact. We have been told that Mauritius, which is not exactly the biggest country in Africa, is 54% now, which is a bit more than they say here, but, and so on and so forth. So the number seems to be a bit difficult. The number of users may not be so easy to characterize. But you can see it's a huge disparity of situation. Now, if you remember that Morocco, Tunisia, and Egypt are the three three countries in the north we have search in first, and so has South Africa. But you also notice that this is also the country that the largest penetration of the Internet, the correlation is absolutely total there. And it's clearly those who have a small penetration have to work hard at increasing that, because it becomes a handicap in economy. So therefore, you can be sure that these numbers will continue to grow very fast, and with them, cybersecurity concerns. You see, whatever that means. All these countries will need to really build search very fast, considering the building of search is the first step in this case, because it's so urgent, there's so many things to do. The search, national search in that case, could be the repository of knowledge where expertise can be found, the inspiration for the country for the many things, even if those searches in other institutions, banks and so on, are very welcome as well. So here I focus a bit on Nigeria for a technical reason. First, because it's an opportunity for me to do some ads for my colleagues and friend Nabil, because Tunisia not only is member of FIRST, it's a CERT of Tunisia. The CERT of Tunisia was created single-handedly, basically by Nabil, Professor Nali, who is here, and Sally, sorry, who is here, and in fact, this is also the first CERT in Africa which was accepted in FIRST. To be accepted, you have to nevertheless go through some audits and have to prove that you know what you're doing. and also was involved. Nigeria has decided, very wise decision, to ask that CERT to come and train them, because some people think we can train the CERT, you come there, make a base assessment, give them a 1-week training, and after that they can call themselves CERT. It's not the way it works. This is a whole process, it's complex. So what the Egyptians decided to do in Nigeria is to come and give them a whole year worth of course in 10 segments, and it is being completed now, in great details, taking them to Tunis and the rest of the time being in Abuja. And now I'm very optimistic, having nevertheless seen quite a little bit in my life, things that the Nigerians are the right track. And it's important because Nigeria is, with its 170 million people, the biggest country in Africa by population, also the biggest economy now because they've changed their system to compute GDP. So it's, and then, as you know, a source of headaches for the rest of mankind when it comes to cybersecurity. So we'll be very happy to see them strengthening their thing. But there's other aspect in this thing which I will not get into. Well, yes, now it's something I should say. They have 67 million now people in the internet, but 122 million people have a smartphone, at least a mobile phone, you see, in Africa, in Nigeria only. And so understand this mobile phone is also a mega source of activity, and it brings also with them quite a few problems of cybersecurity. And the problem of cybersecurity of smartphone is not as well understood, by the way, than the other one is not totally under control, but nevertheless are significantly more advanced than what happened with smartphone. We are discovering now the cybersecurity of smartphones. The African will have to discover it with us. So therefore, they also better learn, but to have with them what's needed in terms of expertise to be able to adjust to this new reality. So this is, and as you say, with smartphone, quite a lot of things happen. Well, I will not go into this episode there. Just mention this, I will skip that because it's a way to say it's not only in those countries that things happen, but Africa has also specialties, you see. There is a 419, which is not specific to Nigeria anymore, but it started there nevertheless. Now in Ghana, they speak of Sakawa. Well, it's a bit spooky, this concept. Sakawa seems to be a mixture of the Ghanaian equivalent of voodoo, this kind of ritual coming from God knows when, and something to do with cybersecurity today. And they even blame Nigeria from it took today. It's a bit unclear, but what is completely clear, that things that are happening under the heading of cybersecurity in Ghana, which is called Sakawa. And so those will be in charge of cybersecurity in those countries will have to deal with contingencies, which are simply unknown outside. But now we see M-Pesa in Kenya. See, they have introduced now this way of making the transferring money from one place to the next by telephone and smartphones like that, which is extremely practical in a country when rural areas are not connected with banks very easily. But that also is a good vector for cybersecurity concern, very specific to those kind of situations. There's not much they can learn from us. And Kenya has some kind of CERT. Kenya has been struggling with building a CERT for ages, and they show that it's not easy to build a CERT. That's something you have to realize, a real challenge. It's a long process. The reason why I admire what Nigeria did, the government was involved, invested, and every country in Africa should understand that very seriously. And as far as possible, either go to places like Egypt maybe, or certainly Tunisia, and first. Now, first seems to be interested to see Africa developing those things. First is a good concentrate of expertise in CERT and things like that. And I do believe that is a place to go, and urgently, in fact. But you can see Nigeria is also a bore, because in the United States now, the so-called Nigerian cyber army is bothering us, you see. So obviously, but I will not go into the details of all these things here. So I would like someone to point to something also. So there is a tendency in general in the cybersecurity community to divide us between good guys and bad guys. But me being faculty to try to teach these kind of things, I've noticed one thing is, ask yourself the question, where is the repository of knowledge in cybersecurity? And it is not where people think. First, it is certainly not the scholars, you see. Because the scholar, I'm one of them. And I can tell you, we are reactive, we are analytical, we come with very clumsy and geeky solution to complicated problems. We are not the driver of change. We don't necessarily produce the best answers. There are some exceptions. Dorothy Dennings, maybe, and Spafford have contributed to show that we can contribute intellectually somewhere. But more fundamentally, you don't go to scholars to expect that the solution will come from there. The military, they have also their interest. The military, when United States, you think they are doing a good job. In fact, they are not, except for NSA. But if you know better about the government of the United States, you discover that they are, I would dare say, because I have not much time to go into details, cyber morons. But except the NSA, which is a pocket of excellence in cybersecurity, but with some kind of cybersecurity spying. But you see, these people in NSA, 3 of my students now are NSA, I'm proud to say, do not enjoy this environment of people who don't understand much about cybersecurity, try still to create an environment, legal and otherwise, doesn't facilitate their life, you see. For the rest, Americans, they can brag that thanks to, they use a lot of cyber, that help them beat their recent opponents like Iraq and Afghanistan, Taliban in Afghanistan. But these opponents are not cyber savvy. It's not as, in fact, the United States has more cyber vulnerability than anything else as we speak now. And they're working at that. Though I don't think they are the guy who have so many lessons to teach you. Governments, as you can see, governments are the last place to go. They have a difficulty to adjust the culture of cybersecurity. That's a place, because cybersecurity is not only a bunch of techniques, and so there's a whole culture with that. The real people to go to are the hackers, which people consider the bad guys. But there is one man, at least in the United States government, that goes good in cybersecurity. He was the head of NSA up until last March, called General Keith Alexander. He understood. He was going not to, as I say, Silicon Valley to see his technology. He also go there. But he went to the DEF CON and Black Hat meetings, and he told these guys, you are the experts. But in fact, if you look back, who created cybersecurity? Who is the driver of change in cybersecurity? This is the hackers. What we do is try to essentially confront the hackers and try to control a bit what they are doing. But fundamentally, it's a result of the fact that things are too complicated and the hackers are abusing us. So coming back to that, so look back to Africa CERT now. This is the challenge, as I can understand it, for Africa CERT. They have to make their way through that. So Africa CERT will be a place which many certs will be associated. So should they emulate EpiCert? To a certain extent, I think yes, because EpiCert is a success story. But EpiCert is made mostly of national certs, and they meet, and what they do best, in fact, is, I suggest, there are several drills they do every year, which reason why it's so good, because first of all, they benefited from the fact Australia is such a good place, and secondly, that in EpiCert you have also China, which is a bit a problematic place, you see, so I will pass on that. IC-CERT also is a place interesting, but Nabil is also apparently one of the founding fathers of that, and because they wanted to do something and it turned into something else, a place where they discuss and exchange, and that was also probably important. But in any case, all this to say, I suppose I will finish with this slide, all this to say that Africa CERT, what they should do is, ideally, is to be this conduit where the knowledge about cybersecurity is built in Africa, wherever anybody in Africa is interested to do something in terms of building CERT, and so that could go to Africa CERT, facilitate, being in contact with everything else, being aware of what goes on in all these countries like Uganda, Cote d'Ivoire, or whatever else, and certainly Nigeria as well, understand where how the expertise is spread in the country, and then from there try to themselves find help. And I do believe Africa CERT, this is my last word, should a very good interface between Africa and the real source of expertise, namely FIRST, for example. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Benoit. The last presentation is from Loganden Velvidron about let's put bind in a sandbox. So Loganden has been working on open source technology since he was a teenager. He has worked for various IT companies that rely on open source software. He currently works as a researcher at AFRINIC, the Regional Internet Registry. During his spare time, he's heavily involved in open source software. Log, the floor is yours.
Hi, everybody. Before I start, I'd like to know how many people run DNS. Great. How many of you use mine, ISC mine? Great. So during this talk, you have to keep in mind that I am not wearing my AFRINIC hat because I work as a researcher on other things. Any bug in the ISC sandbox that I implemented are my own, so please don't blame AFRINIC for it. And this was done in my spare time. So a popular measure that people use when they're running ISC bind, a popular security measure is using shroot. So how many of you, when they run their bind software, they're running inside a shroot environment? 2 people? Okay. And basically how it works is that named starts up as a process, and then it drops privileges, and then it jails itself inside a specific directory, and that's it. So that's a diagram of a shroot environment for bind. So you have your other parts of a file system which are available to the rest of the processors, and then bind itself, it restricts itself to a specific directory, and then it can't escape this directory. But there are limitations with this approach. Anybody has any idea of a limitation of a shroot environment? So, you can use my mic if you want. No. Well, I explained several limitations of a shroot environment, and it's a limitation of a traditional Unix security model. So even if you're running a server process inside a shroot environment, the server process, I mean, assuming a hacker can take control of that process, he still has access to the kernel API. The userland is accessible to him. He can still make system calls. So he can arbitrarily execute code. And he can, for example, build some elaborate exploit code that would allow him to do remote connection and use your bind server as a network worm. That's one example of what can be done. And you have to keep in mind that shroot confines a process to a file system, but it doesn't prevent it from accessing the kernel surface. So I'm going to talk about an additional layer of protection that you can enable in latest version of bind that I implemented. So the idea is kind of simple. Instead of only doing a shroot, what we also do here is that we limit the number of system calls that the bind process can do once it shroots itself. So this has the advantage of, for example, a hacker can't execute code itself. He can't do an execb syscall, for example, and he can't create new circuits. And I should add that this feature is available in bind 9.10.1. It requires, in order for you to use that feature, you need to have a fairly recent version of a Linux kernel with seccomp support. So seccomp is a sandboxing development framework which is currently sponsored by guys from Google. And for example, many of you may not even be aware of it, is that there's a fairly popular piece of software that uses seccomp. It's called OpenSSH. Like if you use OpenSSH on the latest Linux versions, on latest kernel, it takes advantage of seccomp for the pre-authentication part. So what I did here was implementing seccomp support inside named, and the performance impact of this is very low. So compared to other security models such as security enhanced Linux, the performance impact is really slow. Is very small. And as I said, it improves the security of named. So, do you have any questions?
Okay, you done? Thank you very much. So I think we have survived the day. I have just 2 slides to show you, then we go to the question, and then we end up the Africa Cert Cybersecurity Day. So do you have questions for them? You tired? No question? Oh, yeah.
Hi, this is Alan Barrett. Just a simple question for Logan. You've done your work on Linux. Is it portable to any other operating systems, or could it be modified to fit in with other operating systems?
There has been interest in porting seccomp from Linux to other operating systems. For example, someone expressed interest for doing it on OpenBSD. And I think that I've talked to some of the ISC guys, and they are interested in implementing sandboxing on, for example, FreeBSD using a different sandboxing framework known as Capsicum. But that would require major architecture re-engineering of Bind. And I think it's doable because actually I started kind of working on it in my spare time. And there's exchanges back and forth between me, ISC, and some FreeBSD developers about it. But definitely, it's. I think it's so far ISC has been very responsive to our efforts to improve security of named.
Thank you, Olivier.
I've got a question regarding the logs of the bind. Didn't you encounter any issue trying to safeguard the logs, the DNS logs in the bind in such an environment?
Sorry?
Didn't you encounter any issue with the logs of the DNS server, of the bind server, when it was shorted?
Yes. When you shoot, of course, yes, there are logging problems. But you don't, I mean, you can actually use seccomp and disable shroot. That's also possible. But
but to my understanding, the point of your presentation is that you've been shooting the bind.
Yep, shooting bind. That's one additional security layer. But here what we've done is different. We've modified the named server process itself so that if you run it and if you compile it using seccomp, even if you don't use Shroot, the attack surface of an attacker, if he's able to hack into named and take control of your named process, there's very little things he can do. Okay. I was using Shroot to explain the typical security measure that people use for named, but yeah.
Okay, I'm not sure how much time we still have for questions. I don't want to dig into a rat hole. Maybe I should ask this privately. Tell you what I'll do. I'll ask the question, and if you think that it'll take too much time, then don't answer it. You can answer offline. Mike, it's about logging. Why would logging be a problem in a chroot? You just put another syslog listener socket inside the chroot, and you can speak to that, or you can open it before you chroot. Shouldn't be a big issue.
Yeah, that's correct as well.
Okay. I have a question for Kevin. If someone wants to participate to the anti-spam work, I see that you have shown several links. Is the work for the best practice closed, or is it still open for people to participate?
You mean to participate in the spam toolkit, the trainings, or?
The training and the best practice that have been developed during IGF.
Okay, so I'll speak mainly on, I can't speak for what's on the IGF, but for what ISOC is doing, it's open. You're open to participate, and even for the trainings, if you just write to Karen or I, we can see how, once the online modules are ready, it'll be open to the general public.
Okay, thank you.
J'ai une question.
I have a question concerning of presentation of Nabil. He presented an architecture concerning security. I would like ideas which belongs to the architecture. Is it a software, firewall software? What is what role the central firewall plays there? Do you want what is indeed threads to have a link with the firewall? The firewall indeed could integrate needs and have a link between the flux. But you got talking a classical firewall. You'll have you close open ports where attacks can take through. You need needs they behind to control the flux, and then the needs helps to protect against internal attacks. So to have an integrated solution of a firewall of a new generation which stops back and forward, doesn't always protect you from internal attacks because it's blind. Those which overcome this firewall, classical firewall, of course, has open ports, so there are attacks which can go through. That's why we need the needs behind. In a centralized architecture, we have many sites. We are connected to main thing. Should we so install that for each SIDS, or how do we have to do? Generally, is the segment should be behind the firewall. So it should be for each SID. If it's a critical port, it's a critical enter. So that's why the open source approach is interesting, because you don't have a problem to hesitate to say, I am going to develop that or not, because permits, licenses limit you in the way of going forward. Thank you very much.
Okay, Kevin wants to add something.
Just to add on what Prof has said. So for PFSense, you can also have it obtain rules from SNOT and make your firewall a bit more dynamic. So as a threat is recognized by SNOT, you can configure the tool such that once, for example, an IP address has been identified that is trying to attack your network, that IP address can be a rule can be created on PF to automatically block that IP. PFSense is very good for that, and you can also do the same on FreeBSD, OpenBSD, even on, I don't know if Mac supports that, but I think any file that supports PF, you should be able to do that. PFN's not. Yeah.
If you talk a file to one, enables you to do that. He was talking of a classical firewall. Thank you.
So just two slides. Two slides. You have heard a lot about Africa CERT today. Some people have asked the statistic. So from February to yesterday, we have, and again, it's to show you that we need incident response in countries. We have received and responded to 16,628 incidents related to bots, 108 incidents related to DDoS, 2 intrusion attempts, 209 phishing, 72 scanning. We need to do a little bit more effort on spam. So to give you a statistic of what we do daily in terms of responding, helping countries, helping different organizations, you have the numbers. We are working also on developing different tools. A lot of them are with Python for incident response. We are incorporating SysWeb from CI CERT that help people to be notified if there are some intrusion attempts on their website. We have also this product that we are still working on, so if you want to test, you are welcome, which is called V3 Shield. So this is the name, we call it tool. And it allows us, so this comes from a request we received for a country that was having a presidential election, who asked us if we could put stuff together because the president were not willing to have his website hacked. So we put some effort together to set up a system to monitor the tool, and we were able to provide daily what was going on in terms of attack to the website. So we have been reaching out at different conferences this year, Taiwan, Korea, Boston. We have participated, as you have heard, at the ITU Impact Server Drill. We have now a representative for SADC countries, so he was not able to be here, but if you want his contact, I can give it to you. We will increase the certification and training program, our relationship with our different partners, planning to have 4 cybersecurity days next year. So we have an existing MOU with OIC CERT, and last month we signed an MOU with all the regional network in Africa, WACREM, Western and Central Africa Regional Network, and Ubuntu Alliance, which is the Southern and Eastern African regional network to improve training in terms of cybersecurity and to develop capacities inside regional education networks. So we have heard that we are putting together now a law enforcement working group, and it comes from some requests we received that we were not able to answer. Engaging industry leaders, competition and contests are in preparation to improve cybersecurity posture of our continent. And we have some regional activities in the pipe. So why people should join Africa Search, we can talk about that later offline, more deeply if you want. Send an email to project@africasearch.org to receive the membership requirement and the membership form. And from there we can discuss. So we want to thank all our partners, all of you, for your patience, for staying until now. So on this note, if you allow me, I will close the Africa Search Cybersecurity Days. Thank you.